On the day of my wedding, my fiancé abruptly vanished to assist his white Moonlight, who had been involved in a car accident. I called him over 30 times, but he never answered. Later, when his white Moonlight needed a kidney due to kidney failure, he finally remembered me. Unfortunately, I had already died in that same car accident. In my final call, I wanted to tell him, "I'm sorry, Caspian. I can't spend my life with you." Now that I think about it, I'm relieved the call didn't go through. The consequences would have been unimaginable. I sat in shock next to the wrecked car, the sounds of screams and alarms filling the air. I needed help. After all, it was my wedding day, and I had to get to the hotel. But who would help me? Celeste! I heard a familiar voice call. I turned to see my fiancé, Caspian, running towards me in a panic. I smiled and stood up, rushing to meet him. "Caspian, I'm fine," I said, standing in front of him, smiling and extending my hand. But to my shock, he ran right past me without even looking back. Confused, I glanced at my transparent palm, unable to understand what was happening. There was no life left in me, but I was still wearing my wedding dress. I was supposed to be getting married. "Poor thing," I heard someone say. Turning towards the sound, I saw firefighters prying open the door of a mangled car, pulling a woman from the back seat. Her wedding dress was stained with blood. As they laid her on the ground, I saw her face. It was identical to mine. "Is she dead?" someone asked. "No, this can't be real," I thought, panicked. How could I be dead? Desperately, I searched for Caspian. He rushed past the wrecked car, frantically asking doctors and firefighters, "Have you seen Celeste?" I watched him run around, shouting my name, confused until I saw a woman sitting in the ambulance, Celeste. She looked at Caspian with pleading eyes, and they embraced as if no one else existed. I glanced back at the lifeless body on the ground and felt a coldness in my heart. Today was supposed to be the day Caspian and I got married. I stood in a corner of the morgue, staring at my body. The blood and wounds on my face had been cleaned, but bruises remained. Seeing my face from this angle felt so strange. I overheard the traffic police telling the doctor that my family had been informed to come and identify the body. Curiosity gnawed at me. I wanted to see Caspian's reaction when he saw me. But to my surprise, it was my sister Serafina who walked in. My heart raced as I watched her. Led by the traffic police, she stood in front of my body, visibly calm. I noticed her pinching her index finger, a nervous habit of hers. "Is this Alera?" the officer asked softly. "No," Serafina replied, shaking her head without hesitation. The police officer paused, confused. "But we found her ID in the bag next to the deceased, and hospital records confirm it's her," he explained. "I said she isn't," Serafina interrupted, pacing irritably. "This can't be Alera. She's getting married today. You've made a mistake." Serafina stormed out of the room, insisting she needed to find me because the wedding was about to start. And I would be furious if she were late. A doctor stopped her, gently saying, "Serafina, people can't come back to life. Please accept our condolences." Standing at the doorway, she gasped, refusing to look back. I was the only one who knew why she couldn't accept it. Serafina and I had known each other since we were 6, growing up together in an orphanage. We were best friends, and no one else would feel the pain of my death like she would. Seeing her so upset, I approached her and hugged her, whispering, "Don't worry, I'm still here with you." She seemed to calm down. though I wasn't sure if it was my words. The police officer handed Serafina my phone, saying, "We finally managed to retrieve it from her hand." Serafina took the phone, unlocked it using her fingerprint, and looked through the missed calls. She sneered at the sight of 34 missed calls. "Have you called this number?" she asked the police. The officer hesitated, explaining that they had tried twice, but couldn't reach anyone. So they called Serafina's number, which was listed as an emergency contact. 32 missed calls. This is the man she loved. Serafina muttered bitterly. If it weren't for Serafina, would anyone have even come to claim my body? Serafina left the hospital with my belongings, and I followed her closely. In the lobby, we both froze. There was Caspian, flirting with a woman, promising to stay with her during her examination. Caspian still wore the wedding ring I had picked out. What an irony. Later, I stood with Serafina at the funeral home, watching as my body was pushed into the furnace. "I'm sorry," Serafina suddenly whispered. I looked at her, but her eyes were fixed on the coffin. "I didn't tell Caspian you died," she choked. "He didn't deserve your love. I didn't want him to interfere with your reincarnation." As the flames enveloped the coffin, Serafina collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I knelt beside her, stroking her hair. "I don't blame you. I never will." Serafina had never liked Caspian. She had told me many times that he wasn't good for me. But after I started dating him, she never criticized him again, only because she didn't want to hurt me. When I saw Caspian at the hospital, I thought Serafina would confront him. I almost couldn't control myself. He was my fiancé. Yet on our wedding day, he left me to find his first love. He didn't even know I had died. But I was more concerned about Serafina's feelings. As the funeral home staff handed her the box containing my ashes, she hugged it tightly and whispered, "If I had known, I would have gone with you, so you wouldn't be alone." Her words shocked me, filling me with worry. Today's wedding convoy was supposed to pick up both Serafina and me, but I decided to take a taxi to check on Caspian when the hotel manager called with bad news. Serafina wanted to come with me, and I was so thankful I refused her offer. If she had come with me, I would never have forgiven myself. Serafina went home with my ashes, and I stayed with her, just as we had always been. We had lived together since childhood, and after graduating from university, we rented an apartment together. After saving for years, we bought a house. Since we weren't related, only one of us could be on the deed. And Serafina put my name on it without hesitation. I only found out after the fact. When I protested, she promised that we'd add her name when we bought our second home. We finally paid off the mortgage last year, and this year we plan to buy another house. But I didn't keep my promise. Serafina sat in the living room, lost in thought, flipping through an album and quietly talking to herself. I sat beside Serafina, staring at the album in her hands as she reflected on our youthful days. Serafina never liked being in photos, but I did. After learning how to use a camera, I printed the pictures myself and created the album. The one Serafina was holding was a birthday gift from me 3 years ago. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. I anxiously glanced at it, hoping it was Caspian. To my disappointment, 2 men entered. One of them was my lawyer, here to read the will I made 2 years ago after the news broke. At that time, I had visited a lawyer to arrange a will, leaving all my assets to Serafina after my passing. The lawyer had the news, but Caspian was still unaware. The other man was from the insurance company. I recalled now that a colleague of mine, who was working in insurance sales, had recommended a policy to everyone at the company to meet her sales target. I couldn't refuse, so I took out an accident insurance policy with Serafina as the beneficiary. The lawyer and the insurance agent informed us that if I were to die in a car accident, the insurance company, the driver at fault, and the public sector would all pay some compensation. Together with my assets, it would probably total over 6 million. I was content with this amount, as it would be enough for Serafina to buy a house and live comfortably for the rest of her life, even without working. Serafina, if there are no questions, please sign here, the lawyer said, pulling out the document. Serafina stared blankly at it, her gaze locked on the first page. Noting that I had made the will 2 years ago, she looked up at the lawyer, who nodded in confirmation. A tear slipped down Serafina's cheek, and she suddenly buried her face in her hands, sobbing. It was the first time she cried since my death. "I'm sorry," Serafina whispered, quickly calming down after the lawyer and his colleagues left. She took the week off work and didn't go out anymore. Every day she ordered takeout and groceries, preparing 3 different dishes for every meal, all of which were my favorites. She set the table and kept urging me to eat more, as if it were just like old times. I sat across from her, watching her with red eyes as she fought back tears. My nose began to sting. In our hometown, it's customary for the deceased to return home to say their final goodbyes before the 7th day after death. Serafina didn't want to shed a tear because she feared it would hinder her reincarnation. So she held back. She picked up her chopsticks and pretended to eat. But strangely, she seemed to taste the food. After dinner, we would sit on the couch together and watch TV, our favorite activity. I'm not a good cook, and Serafina didn't like washing dishes. So I usually handled the ingredients while she washed the dishes after dinner, and I mopped the floor. Afterwards, we'd lie on the couch, cuddling, and eat washed fruit while watching TV. We laughed at awkward dramas and giggled at funny variety shows. Now Serafina was alone, staring expressionlessly at the TV. I saw her fiddling with the remote, and the screen suddenly shifted to show Celeste, Caspian's first love and a famous pianist. She was wearing a white dress, playing the piano elegantly. Serafina's face changed instantly, and she muttered something under her breath. Just as she was about to change the channel, Celeste suddenly collapsed onto the piano keys, motionless, causing chaos at the scene. Serafina quickly changed the channel. "Didn't Caspian rush on stage?" she muttered. As soon as Serafina walked into my room, the phone rang. It was my ringtone. We were all stunned. Serafina glanced at the phone on the bedside table with a conflicted expression. She picked it up, wiped the bloodstains off it, and charged it daily, though it never rang until now. Someone had finally remembered to call. Serafina watched the phone light up and go out. She picked it up when Caspian called for the 3rd time. "Ayla, I didn't mean to stand you up that day. Something came up last minute," Caspian said. Serafina sneered. "That's what you called to say." Caspian hesitated before responding. AA asked her to pick up the phone. I could picture Caspian's expression on the other end of the line, frowning impatiently. I'd seen that look before when I missed his call and returned it. He had no patience. I even witnessed him across the street with that annoyed expression. Serafina was furious. "Who do you think you are? You left AA on your wedding day to chase after another woman, and now you have the nerve to ask AA to see your mistress. Caspian, you've gone too far." After scolding him, Serafina hung up, despite feeling disappointed. She still felt a pang in her heart. Caspian didn't call back, and Serafina thought he had calmed down. However, she didn't realize she had become the target of online exposure. Serafina was browsing the internet when she saw the news that Celeste had been diagnosed with cancer and needed a kidney transplant. Celeste, who had posted videos of herself performing and had a large following, had become the center of attention. As soon as the news spread, her fans flooded social media, hoping to find her a donor. Somehow, they discovered that my kidney was a match for Celeste. They started leaving comments under my Weibo post, urging me to donate. Unfortunately, I didn't respond. Celeste reassured her fans, saying she couldn't force anyone to donate, but she would try her best to keep fighting. Her fans, disappointed, turned to my Weibo, accusing me of being heartless and unwilling to help. They claimed that I wouldn't die if I lost a kidney, and some even found my personal information, threatening to come after me. Serafina was enraged, believing Celeste was just a manipulative woman. She went straight to Celeste's Weibo to scold her for being a mistress. Of course, Celeste's fans didn't believe the accusations and attacked Serafina, threatening her with harm. I had heard that some fans could take things too far, and I worried they might go after Serafina. But I felt helpless. Soon, someone revealed my connection to Celeste. A post appeared online, claiming I refused to donate a kidney to Celeste because of jealousy, as we were half-sisters. The post suggested that I didn't want to help Celeste because of the remarriage between my father and Celeste's mother. Celeste's mother also voiced her dissatisfaction, implying that I was ungrateful despite my father's financial support. The internet quickly became flooded with accusations that I was cold-hearted. Serafina tried to explain, but no one believed her. I wanted her to move on, but Celeste's family had the resources to hire online trolls, and Serafina was outnumbered. I advised her to stay out of it. I had known for a long time that Celeste was my half-sister. When I first found out that Caspian had feelings for Celeste, I researched her and found a photo of her with her parents. I recognized her father as the man who had left my mother and me years ago. Celeste's mother had seduced my father, leading him to abandon his wife and child to be with her. Before he left, my father blamed my mother for not bearing a son, and it devastated her, worsening her depression until she passed away shortly after. The Celeste family didn't want to take responsibility for me, so I became an orphan. I never imagined that after all these years that man would try to use me to save his daughter. Unfortunately, his research was incomplete, and he was destined for disappointment. Caspian called again, and this time, Serafina picked up. She confronted him, asking why he was attacking me online when I hadn't done anything wrong. She reminded him that it was Celeste's family who had abandoned me all those years ago. Caspian ignored her and coldly replied that if I didn't agree to donate a kidney to Celeste, he would cancel the wedding. Serafina, her face flushed with anger, yelled back that he didn't deserve me. I gently patted her back to calm her down, and memories of Caspian flooded my mind. When I first met him, he was a client, and it was my first solo project. I was so busy that I made a mistake with the data. But Caspian reassured me gently, telling me not to worry. After the project ended, he began courting me. Caspian was gentle and charming, and it was hard not to be moved. Once we became a couple, he introduced me to his close friend. On the way there, I overheard his friend ask if he was with me because I resembled Celeste. Caspian didn't deny it. When I learned that I was merely a stand-in for Celeste, I wanted to break up with him. But then I found out Celeste was his half-sister, which made me want to leave him even more. However, shortly after, I had an accident and was trapped in a fire. Caspian rushed in to save me without considering his own safety. I thought that everyone had a past, and if I gave him more time, he would forget about it, and we would be happy together. We were happy for a while, but I had overestimated both myself and Caspian. From the start, we were likely a mistake. The online attacks against me continued, and Serafina kept defending me. Just when Celeste's fans threatened to find my home and visit me, a message appeared saying I had passed away and asking everyone to let the deceased rest in peace. Celeste's fans didn't believe it, thinking I'd faked my death to avoid donating a kidney. Some even suggested that if I wanted to die, I should do it sooner rather than later to avoid wasting resources and curse the person who spread the news. The person who shared the information provided his ID, saying he was an active firefighter. He explained that he had participated in a major car accident rescue 6 days ago, where he found me unconscious. He revealed that I was wearing a wedding dress when I died. He even mentioned how he had lamented to his colleagues how quickly life could change, with the happiest moments ending abruptly. Despite the firefighter's testimony, Celeste's fans refused to believe it and questioned how he knew it was me. They had posted his photo ID online, making it easy to recognize him. Then, a traffic police officer joined in, revealing the cause of my death and mentioning a phone number in my call history that had been dialed 32 times unsuccessfully. The officer added that my emergency contact had been reached, and someone had helped with the funeral arrangements. With the official statement, although some of Celeste's fans continued to argue, most passers-by stopped their attacks and began to apologize. Serafina posted on my Weibo, stating that the truth would be revealed, and that those spreading rumors should expect legal action. She had been contacting lawyers to collect evidence for days. I understood what she meant. She could have announced my death much earlier without facing blame, but she had refused to accept that I was gone. She always believed I was still here. I told her I would never blame her, my dearest sister. After my death was confirmed, Celeste suffered from online abuse. The public opinion shifted completely, and apart from Celeste's fans, no one accused me of being cold-hearted anymore. Celeste's academic fraud was exposed, including her purchased piano exams. A report was made about Celeste bullying a classmate in junior high school, which led to the classmate jumping from a third-floor bathroom, surviving but losing a leg. This caused a huge stir. Celeste fled abroad to avoid facing criminal responsibility, and she later obtained her high school diploma with help from others. In addition, Celeste's mother was exposed as a mistress, and Celeste's father had abandoned his wife and daughter. The alimony that Celeste's family claimed to have paid was a lie. My own experience of growing up in an orphanage was well documented, and a little investigation revealed the lies of Celeste's family. Sadly, people tend to follow the crowd. If 3 people say something is true, most won't question it and will just agree. Eventually, Celeste's family's small factory shut down. The netizens dug up the 32 missed calls on my phone, all of which had been to Caspian. He had always loved Celeste and had been infatuated with her since junior high. Celeste knew this and had kept him dangling. She had told her friends abroad about it. Nyson, a follower, scolded Caspian and Celeste, calling them despicable and claiming they shouldn't hurt others. She said she had become part of their game, which was really sad. But in the end, it didn't matter. Watching Serafina hum while she cooked, I felt a sense of peace. We were eating when the doorbell rang. Serafina went to answer it, and a man barged in. Upon closer inspection, it was Caspian. After a few days apart, he seemed like a different person. He had a beard, and his clothes were wrinkled as if he hadn't changed them for days. He had always been meticulous about his appearance, never going out without shaving. I watched him stumble around like a headless chicken. Serafina stepped forward to stop him, but he pushed her away and she hit the wall. I floated over to her, nervously watching her rub the back of her head. "Where is AA? Where have you hidden her?" Caspian demanded as he burst into my room but was stopped by Serafina. "What's wrong with you? You're not welcome here. AA is my wife." Serafina snapped. Caspian's eyes burned with rage. "You didn't get married. You didn't even get a license, so how can AA be your wife?" Serafina shot back, glaring at him. "Don't forget, you're the one who caused AA to leave." Caspian shook his head violently. "No, I didn't. It wasn't me." Serafina stepped forward, forcing him to take 2 steps back. "If you hadn't stood her up, she wouldn't have gone looking for you. If she hadn't gone looking for you, the car accident wouldn't have happened. You killed her, you murderer." "No, I didn't," Caspian yelled, pushing Serafina away. He rushed into my room. I could hear the sound of his devastation as he collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. This can't be real. I never wanted things to turn out this way. But Serafina had no empathy. "Don't pretend," she said. "If you truly loved AA, you wouldn't have abandoned her on your wedding day. What did you take AA for? And you even made her donate a kidney to that mistress. How disappointing." Caspian shook his head repeatedly, denying it. "No, it wasn't like that. Celeste called me, saying she was ill. I was just worried about Celeste and planned to come back once she felt better. I never meant to hurt AA. I only wanted to help Celeste." Serafina let out a bitter laugh, tears streaming down her face. "You keep saying you didn't want to hurt AA. But how do you explain abandoning her to take care of Celeste? What kind of person are you?" Serafina's anger grew, and she slapped Caspian twice. "Get out of here. AA doesn't want to see you." Caspian grabbed his ear. "I'm not leaving. I want to stay with AA." Serafina struggled to pull him away and became even angrier. She took out her phone. "This is AA's phone," she said, opening it and handing it to Caspian. "Look at how you killed AA." When Caspian saw the 32 missed calls on the phone, he was stunned. With more than 30 missed calls, you can imagine how desperate AA must have been, Serafina said angrily. Caspian opened his mouth, then closed it. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ignore her calls." Serafina scoffed. "You didn't mean to? AA even apologized to you before she died. Are you worthy of that apology?" She paused for a moment. "I remember now. I couldn't reach Caspian, so I left him a voice message. What did I say to him? I think it was something like, 'Sorry, Caspian, I won't be able to stay with you until the end.'" Caspian howled in regret. Serafina immediately responded, "You can go now." After a while, Caspian calmed down and asked, "Can I have AA's phone?" Serafina laughed as if she had heard a joke. "Do you think you deserve it?" she said, before taking the phone back from him. Caspian's hands clenched until his palms turned white, but he didn't let go. Serafina gently said, Don't let AA hate you. With that, Caspian finally released the phone. Caspian left, dazed and emotionless. A video appeared online, and many people liked it. Serafina clicked on it and saw a recording of Caspian arguing with her in a hospital room. It seemed that the Celeste family, now struggling financially after their actions had been exposed, had moved Celeste from a private room to a shared one. The video, filmed by someone else, showed Caspian entering the room while Celeste immediately complained about the poor condition, saying she couldn't adapt and needed to move back to a private room. "You knew AA was your sister all along?" Caspian asked coldly. Celeste looked aggrieved. "My father has been searching for me for years. I want to see my sister too." "Stop pretending," she said. Caspian interrupted her. "You came back to me because you wanted AA's kidney, right? You've been telling people abroad that I was your servant. And if I hadn't given you money, you wouldn't have even looked at me twice." Seeing Caspian had done his research, Celeste stopped pretending. She sneered. "Am I wrong? You're just a lapdog." Caspian's face went pale. "You deliberately called me on my wedding day." Celeste's face darkened. "You're my lapdog. Even if I don't like you, you can't marry anyone else, especially AA. Why should she be healthy while I'm sick? I didn't expect her to go so soon. She really deserved it." "Shut up! Don't you dare talk about AA." Caspian slapped Celeste hard. Celeste stared at him, stunned. "How dare you slap me?" she yelled. "You always saw AA as my substitute, thinking you were something special. Now you're pretending to be deeply in love. It's really disappointing." Caspian slapped her again, and she was eventually dragged out. Serafina took me away. She bought a house with a garden in a peaceful town, a place we used to visit together. We loved the view there and often joked about retiring there someday. Serafina kept her promise, but I never did. Serafina planted a tree in the garden and buried my ashes beneath it. I thought this was a nice, environmentally friendly idea, and I could always stay by her side. She visits me every day to talk, but she doesn't know that I'm always with her. I squat across from her so we can talk, face to face. "I sold the house," Serafina said. "The Celeste family wants to fight me in court over your inheritance. I didn't want to give them what they wanted, because I knew you would come with me after they fell from grace. My so-called father remembered me and fought Serafina for the inheritance. I don't know where he heard about it, but he even took Serafina to court. When Serafina got the summons, the incident blew up online. People condemned the Celeste family for their poor parenting and audacity to ask for money. Many lawyers reached out to Serafina, offering free assistance with the lawsuit. Before the trial even began, the Celeste family was reported for bribery and thrown in jail. Celeste was abandoned by Caspian and could no longer pay her hospital bills. She and her mother even approached Serafina, asking for money since she was the stepmother and technically entitled to a portion of the estate. Serafina, furious, made a video and posted it online, drawing scorn from people. Later, more details emerged, revealing that Celeste had visited Caspian's company to find someone. Then Serafina sold the house, quit her job, and moved me to a new place. Caspian's visit took me by surprise, and Serafina was immediately upset. "What are you still doing here?" she demanded. Caspian, now thinner with sunken eyes, looked gloomier than before. He stood in front of Serafina, his lips dry. "I've known Celeste since junior high. Back then, she was bright and outgoing, like a little sun. I liked her. Then she suddenly went abroad without saying a word. I couldn't let go, thinking it was love. But when I met AA, at first I approached her because she resembled Celeste. But then we went through life and death moments together, and I realized I had fallen for AA. My obsession with Celeste was just a youthful crush. AA always says I'm warm, but it's really her who warms me. She comforts me when I feel lost, spends hours making soup for me, and even takes me to play crane machines. I quietly watched Caspian, but the sadness in his eyes didn't move me. Compared to the time I spent with him, I thought. I remembered more about what happened with Serafina. The first time I cooked, I cut my finger. After that, Serafina never let me cook again. The first time we went to the amusement park, we rode the pirate ship 3 times. Oh, what are you trying to prove by saying all this? Serafina asked with disgust. AA is dead. No matter how much sweet talk you say, she can't hear it. Caspian's face drained of color. Can you tell me where AA's grave is? I went to the site of AA's accident, he said. I was so close to her. But no matter how much I think about it, I can't remember if I saw her or not. I don't have any pictures of her. I just want to see her again, to be close to her. Serafina refused and Caspian left. He returned the next month, standing outside the courtyard for an entire day and night. At first, the confused townspeople thought he and Serafina were lovers, quarreling. Caspian stubbornly stayed, trying to convince Serafina to give in, even after she poured a bucket of water on him in frustration. He remained determined and kept returning, always asking where the cemetery was, though Serafina refused to answer. Over time, her initial disgust gave way to indifference. Despite everything, Caspian never tried to enter the yard, but his persistent visits made him appear more pathetic with each passing month. Serafina eventually set up 2 wicker chairs in the yard. On sunny days, she would sit, staring at the tree, and I understood her message. Caspian didn't love me as much as he thought. He was simply clinging to something he couldn't let go of. His earlier obsession with Celeste, developed in his youth, had faded once he realized she wasn't as wonderful as he'd imagined. Then, my death, caused by his actions, made him redirect all his emotions toward me. He exaggerated every small thing I did for him, convincing himself I was the one who loved him the most. His deepest regret was losing me because of Celeste. Caspian confessed to Serafina that he was tormenting Celeste to seek revenge, but she told him to stop pretending he was acting on my behalf. I had nothing to do with Celeste anymore, and whatever became of her wasn't my concern. All Caspian's actions were motivated by his guilt, aiming only to ease his conscience. Both Serafina and I recognized this, which is why she refused to let him use my memory for his own purposes. Caspian eventually died, and the police contacted Serafina to collect his belongings. She was confused as to why they reached out to her, but she went anyway. He had been involved in a fatal accident, taking another life before ending his own. Upon investigation, the authorities concluded it was a suicide. They handed Serafina a blue envelope, inside which we found a suicide note written by Caspian. In his note, Caspian apologized, expressing confusion over how things had turned out. He wrote that he once thought Celeste was the source of his happiness, but it was only after meeting me that he found real joy. After I was gone, he was haunted by my memory, but he knew he had lost me forever. He blamed Celeste for everything, describing the argument she had with her driver that led to the fatal car accident. The driver had died instantly, and I had become involved, which Caspian believed was ultimately Celeste's fault. He wondered if things would have been different had he not gone to see Celeste that day. He begged for my forgiveness, writing that he would join me soon. The discovery of this note revealed the hidden truth behind the accident, a secret I hadn't known. Caspian's will also included a request to be buried with me, and he left all his assets to Serafina. She handled his funeral arrangements, paying for a 30-year storage of his ashes. However, Serafina refused to accept Caspian's estate, instead instructing a lawyer to donate his wealth to a reputable foundation. Afterward, she returned to the quiet life in our small town. From then on, life in the town seemed to pass in isolation. Serafina found a job as an English teacher at a local school where the number of students was small, making her work easy. After each day, she would buy fresh vegetables at the market. She never remarried, and people in the town thought she was odd. But Serafina didn't care about their opinions. One day, she moved both wicker chairs into the shade of the now towering tree. 30 years had passed since she first planted that tree, and it had grown strong. Sitting in the chair, she placed her hand on the other wicker seat, reflecting on how quickly time had flown. As she sat there, I squatted beside her, noticing her grey hair and feeling a pang of sadness. Serafina sighed, speaking aloud to me as if I was still there. "AA, you're probably still waiting for me on the other side. But I'm so old now. Will you still recognize me?" She touched her face, worried. I shook my head and reassured her, knowing I would recognize her no matter how she looked. Serafina smiled wistfully, admitting she wished she could look younger when she passed away, not wanting me to see her as an old woman. I chuckled, realizing that even as people grow older, they still worry about such things. She began to talk about how others gossiped behind her back, calling her odd for not marrying. Serafina, however, believed marriage was overrated and didn't understand why people cared so much about it. She said she would have been content with just having close friends. She placed her hand on the armrest, and I covered it with my own. "I've never felt lonely," she said, "because I always feel like AA is here with me." Serafina had donated the money I left her to an orphanage in my name, explaining that we had once benefited from others' kindness, so it was only right to give back. As Serafina continued to chat, I stayed with her, feeling her hands grow cold. I looked at her face, peaceful, with a slight smile on her lips. "AA?" I whispered. Standing up, under the tree, I saw Serafina's translucent spirit, now looking my age, beaming with happiness. She ran into my arms and I held her tight. "I knew you wouldn't leave me behind," she said, tears of joy in her eyes. "It's been so long. Don't let go this time." We smiled at each other, holding hands, and walked off together into the distance. A soft breeze rustled the leaves, and a single leaf fell gently into Serafina's hand.